Are they going to push this? Because earlier we were hearing they're probably not going to push this. We're probably going to let this go. Probably going to wait until, and if there's possibly another Supreme Court appointee who would be necessary from this, or nominee who would be necessary from this president. Are things changing?
Well, it's interesting because Schumer definitely indicated that they're going to filibuster him, and now there's sort of talk about maybe in an effort to preserve the filibuster for a bigger fight, a more contentious nomination down the road, because this Scalia seat replacement won't obviously change the balance of the court. Maybe Democrats should work with the Senate Majority Leader and try to come up with something where the Democrats who are up in 2018 in states that Trump won support Gorsuch because he's so acceptable and he's, got such sterling credentials, and he's, Jimmy Stewart and everything else that we saw last week, in order to save a fight for another time and filibuster on another justice. We really don't know where it's headed right now, but I think that, they're just going to come out and say all these bad things about Gorsuch and why they can't vote for him, but I'm not so sure they're going to filibuster him.
Yeah, I wondered about that, if they wouldn't save that for later. But this new Gallup poll, this is significant. The president's approval rating continues to go down. This was taken over the weekend after the loss on health care on Friday. His approval rating is down to 36%. You get down to 1/3 in approval rating, and traditionally, you start losing supporters. People start turning against you and your agenda. Isn't that a concern, or is it not?
Right. Senator McCain, as you remember, Shep, teased President Bush that when you get down to those numbers, you're talking about friends, family, and paid staff only. So look at this in terms of the timeline of tax reform. If the end is tax reform sometime later this year, think of the bruising health care fight, the fact that you can tell from Price Secretary Sean Spicer's comments that they don't really know what to do. They don't know whether to sort of declare it over, pretend they're still working on it, say it must be repealed. Maybe it just needs to be replaced. They really haven't landed on a place to sort of be at peace and make a plan. And so they just want to get to tax reform. Well, that's later in the year, after you get through a bruising budget fight and after you get through increasing the debt ceiling, which the House Freedom Caucus members, the most conservative among the Republican conference that just sort of cost this health care win for the president, are also going to refuse and to balk. And so, how much is he going to really work with Democrats when he's called the leadership of the party losers, and he's pretty much undoing President Obama's sort of executive order structure that he put in place over a period of 8 years. His approval, Shep, among Democrats is at 8%. So it's not really looking good on day 66 or 7 for him to reach out to Democrats. There are some that will work for him, but if you look at that 36% and you see where it might be in August or September, that's going to make tax reform that much harder.
But getting anything done, AB, the Freedom Caucus has given every indication with their votes over time, including this most recent one, that they are a no vote. They're a no vote. That's what they do. If you try to appease them and give them things you want, which they tried to do in this health care bill, beginning on Monday or over the weekend and then on Monday, then you start to lose the Tuesday group. That's the more moderates, whose seats are really in more jeopardy, many of whom are in sort of what were considered Hillary Clinton districts back in the day. They can't. So if you start losing those and then you're losing these, you can't get the votes. You got to find them somewhere. If you can't get them somewhere, absolutely nothing will happen. And then you become a promise breaker, because he promised this and he promised that, and he promised tax reform, and if they won't cooperate, he can't have it.
That's what's so difficult to imagine him working with Democrats on health care, because do you find enough Democrats to overcome the losses that you'll take from the conservative pocket in the House Republican Conference? Look, what they obviously thought, what Steve Bannon, the chief strategist, president thought, was that Trump was so popular in the districts of these Freedom Caucus members that they would get the moderates and the Freedom Caucus.
That's because he doesn't know anything about Washington, though, isn't it? Just like I don't. But I know this much. I know this much about Washington. Those people are in safe districts. And you can't go in there and tell those people what to do. Who's the congressman who said the last time somebody told me what to do, I was 18, it was my daddy, and I told him no, too? That ain't how Washington works. It's never worked like that. I mean, maybe he hasn't studied it. Maybe he doesn't know anything about it, because that's not how it works. You got to give to get. They didn't give, and they got it.
Right, and that's the problem, is they're going to have to find a way. They're going to be giving more if they want to get their votes through, to get a budget through and to get the debt ceiling increase. And those are going to be bruising battles, like I said, before you get to this tax reform that everyone wants and apparently unites the Republican Party so much. And as you pointed out, there are sacred cows everywhere in tax reform. What you'll probably end up with is a bunch of sacred cows and not a bill, because everyone wants their carve out for their special interests. So that is it is a big fight. And it seems really hard, but it's one they love to talk about now. What they don't want to